Okay, we're live on YouTube and recording.
You ready to get started?
Yes.
Okay. I call this Council Town Hall special meeting of June 21st, 2020 to order at 6:04 p.m. Will everybody please rise and join me to say in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Will the city clerk please read the Open Public Meetings Act?
Okay. Excuse me. Please be advised that the City Council of the City of Englewood will conduct a town hall special meeting on Monday, June 21st, 2021 at 6 p.m. The purpose of the town hall is to discuss the draft request for proposals prepared in relation to the development of Russell C. Major Liberty School. The council will also go into closed session to discuss items permitted under the Open Public Meetings Act, specifically contract negotiations, litigation matters, personnel matters, and matters within the attorney-client privilege. In accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act and JSA 10:4-6 et seq. and Local Finance Notice 2020-21 establishing standard protocols, meeting will be held telephonically and virtually via Zoom. Members of the public who wish to participate in this meeting may do so by calling or clicking on the link below at 6 p.m. Please see a link on our website, or by dialing 929-205-6099. The meeting ID for this meeting is 815-9009-6201, and the passcode is 795581. Individuals calling into this number will be able to fully participate in the meeting, including providing public comment. Public comments may be submitted by 3 p.m. on the date of the meeting, either through written letter or email to meeting@cityofenglewood.org. All written comments shall be read during the public forum portion of the meeting and shall be subject to the same time limitations for public speaking. Duplicative comments shall be noted for the record and summarized. The agenda for the meeting can be found on the city's website at www.cityofenglewood.org. A separate meeting will be used for the closed session. The council reserves the right to discuss and act upon such public business as may be brought up for consideration to the extent that consideration of such public business is not known at this time. Formal action may or may not be taken. Proper notice having been given, the municipal clerk is directed to include the statement in the minutes of this meeting.
Can you read through the roll call, please? Yes.
Councilman Cohen?
Yes.
Councilman Hamer?
Here.
Councilwoman Marin?
Here.
Councilman Rosenzweig?
Here.
Council President Cobb?
Here.
I'm not seeing Mayor Michael Wiles yet. No. Okay, also present is City Manager Sonia Alves Viveros, City Attorney Bill Bailey, Planner Stan Slahekta. With him is Robert Dare.
Yancy, I think we have to talk to Mr. Bailey about item number F on that. And number E, Town Hall discussion of the Russell C. Major Liberty School draft RFP. Bullet number 1, introduction of the RFP process. Planner Stan Slahekta and City Attorney Bill Bailey. Draft RFP overview, Stan Slahekta. And we'll have a Q&A, which will be done through Zoom. And after that, the meeting will come to a conclusion, I believe. Bill, if I said something out of turn, please correct me.
Just a minor clarification. We had put on the agenda Q&A for questions that people could post via Zoom that we could try to respond to before opening it up for the regular public comment on the RFP with regard to this project. So I don't know if we've received any via Zoom, but sometimes we receive them and they can actually answer the questions several people might have. But it was going to go through that step first. If there are none, then it will go right to the public comment for their input and comments regarding the draft RFP.
My understanding was that the RFP, all the comments would come through the Zoom. Is that not what you're saying tonight?
Well, there's two forms of Zoom. There's people commenting live, so to speak, by Zoom, or people posting questions electronically. If you see there's a Q&A provision.
Oh, like this.
In other words, it's not two public comments.
Right. No, that's what I want to make clear.
Right.
But my understanding is that everything will be through the Zoom chat and through electronic questions through that method. I just want to be clear as we go through this.
Right, but then you do have to give people the ability to comment like we do at the regular meetings.
There
Okay,
are some questions being dropped into Q&A
right.
currently.
Mm-hmm. Because we have a hard stop at 8 p.m. This is a 2-hour meeting.
We do have a closed session as well, just to remind you.
Okay.
Unrelated.
So we might as well get started with Stan, right?
Mr. Cobb, I think Sonia also had just one comment quickly as well.
Okay.
Just two things, Council President. So for anyone who's here at the meeting or anyone after the meeting, the draft RFP is on our website. So if you go to our homepage, there is a tab that says Liberty School project. And once you click on there, then you can access the draft if you'd like to follow along. Second thing is there is an email address that you can send questions after this meeting. And with that, we'll post it on the website. So all of the Q&As will be posted on the city's website.
And also, if people like to pick up a hard copy, I believe we're going to make a hard copy available to them at City Hall. Can we do that?
Of course.
Okay. All right. With that being said, Mr. Slahekta, will you start, and good evening, and walk us through this draft RFP?
Thank you, Council President and members of the council. I don't know, Bill, did you want to start with anything before I started proceeding into the discussion of the RFP document?
If I can just briefly explain, very briefly, that as everyone knows, well, one, thank you for everyone coming tonight for this important meeting.
Right.
As everyone, I believe, knows, that this area was an area in need of redevelopment by the city of Englewood a while ago. When public entities do that, part of the process is then to issue a request for proposals, or RFP, which goes out to the public at large and permits interested parties that are seeking to develop the site to submit their proposals. However, to get to that point, the municipality has to prepare an actual document that gets noticed and published. And that's where Stan comes in. Stan is an extremely experienced planner in the area of redevelopment planning. And Stan has prepared that draft. And the purpose of tonight's meeting is to get public input regarding that before it's finalized and actually issued and formally put out there by the city, which then starts the process for interested parties to submit their proposals. As you'll see in the RFP, there's a lot of information they have to provide. It's not only the use that they seek to put on the site, but their financial ability and wherewithal, experience, references, and much more than that, which is in the RFP, but Stan can elaborate on that. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Stan then to walk us through.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. That actually was a very good introduction. And I just want to emphasize an important point that you made, that this site, the Liberty School site, has been designated as an area in need of redevelopment by the city. And because of that, ultimately, what will be happening is a preparation of a redevelopment plan for this tract. And part of the process, and the reason that the city is engaged in a request for proposal process, is that the intent is to sort of cast a wide net in terms of ideas and perspectives from both private developers, nonprofits, and other entities that may be interested in redeveloping the Liberty School site. And based upon the results of that search and the responses that the city receives, the city will be crafting a redevelopment plan for the Liberty School site that will be reflective of and correspond to the approach that that has been selected by the city, which is deemed by the governing body as being the approach that is in the best interest of the city, both from a fiscal and financial and economic perspective, but also as it relates to and advances the vision of the redevelopment of the Liberty School site. And we'll get into a couple of those points that are presented in the RFP. Although the city is interested in soliciting a wide range of potential proposals for the future use and redevelopment of the Liberty School site, there are very clear preferences that are established and presented in the RFP document. That one, a proposal that proposes a community center would be favorably considered by the city council, as well as proposals that protect and maintain the historic character of the Liberty School building and site. So those are preferences that are enunciated within the RFP document. What we're doing this evening is actually quite unusual, and typically a municipality does not have a public hearing or a public meeting on a draft request for proposal document before it's released. But this is based on the city's desire and the council, and the mayor, and the governing body's desire to get as much public input as possible, not only in terms of reviewing the respondents, which there will be 2 public hearings, public meetings on those, on reviewing the respondents, but to before the RFP is issued, to get public input in the crafting and the presentation of the request for proposal document. Now, it's a pretty complex, it's a very detailed document, as Bill has alluded to. And one of the things that I'm not going to do is, for everybody's benefit, is not go in through the document on a word by word basis. I'm just going to highlight the basic structure and some of the important points that the document includes. And I think that, certainly if there's any specific questions on any one specific phrase or the way that the language is presented in the document, we're glad to answer any questions and respond to that. But I think for the benefit of everybody, I think going through a detailed but higher level discussion of the document. So, Yancy, is it possible for me to share my screen? Because I think that will help in walking through things.
Yeah, we could do that. Mr. Cobb, you're okay with that?
Yes.
Okay, and just can I state for the record that Mayor Wells is present for the meeting as well? Stan, to get you to share the screen, since you didn't send me the document, I'm just going to have to make you the host.
That's
and
fine.
hosting duties for me later. Okay.
That would be fine. So just let me know when we're ready.
All right, your host.
Okay, thank you. All right, let me share my screen and screen number 2. Okay. Can everybody see the screen now?
Yep.
Fantastic. So this is the draft request for proposal document that was mentioned is both on file at the clerk's office and available online. So obviously this is the cover page. We have some basic information about the dates in the document, and we have probably the first point that I want to address is the table of contents, because I think the table of contents provides a very good outline of what's in here. And essentially what happens when the city issues or a municipality issues out a request for proposal, there's a variety of information about the site and about the potential development of the site as enunciated in the community's planning documents like master plan, redevelopment plans, and other relevant planning documents. But there's information about the site. there's some basic information that's provided that provides a foundation of the intents, the interests, and perspective of the city, of the municipality, in the seeing the future development and redevelopment of the site that the RFP is or the site that is subject to the RFP. And as Bill alluded to, there's a lot of information that is required of all the respondents. And one of the fundamental things that we want to make sure when the city is reviewing proposals and then ultimately entering into a redeveloper agreement with the selected entity that has the successful response that the city judges, as I said, in its best interest, that ultimately is a contract, a binding agreement between that designated party and the city to ensure that whatever development or whatever is done to the site is done in accordance with the redevelopment plan that's ultimately adopted for the site, but also the expressed elements or components of the project that the respondent has committed to undertaking. And so, for example, if the respondent is providing a community center as part of the proposal, and that's the selected response, there is going to be a binding requirement that action, that what they have proposed is actually going to take place. There's also a lot of information in here that is required of the respondent to ensure the city that the respondent has the fiscal wherewithal, financial wherewithal, I should say, and the ability and a proven track record to deliver the kinds of projects or the project that is being proposed. And there's a lot of information that's required, not only of the primary respondent, but if the respondent has any partners, any entities that are joining with the respondent to deliver the project, we need to know that information as well. So the city has a good understanding of the track record of the entire team, respondent team that's being proposed, has information on the types of projects it has undertaken. It has reassurances and hard and fast information regarding the financial wherewithal of the successful respondent to ensure that project is successfully done in a manner that is consistent with the community's vision for the Liberty School site. So when we look at the table of contents, those are the fundamental elements that are encapsulated and presented in this request for a proposal document. We have an introduction and some general information, they said, about the site, about the process, the information about the timetables and schedules. You'll note that in the draft, we haven't filled in those specific dates as of yet, because we obviously haven't finalized the proposal. But once the request for proposal is in fact finalized and issued, that final proposal will have all the relevant dates and presented in the final document. There's information in section 2 about the redevelopment designation, the fact that this has been previously designated as an area needed redevelopment. It describes some of the basic things that the city is looking for in terms of the types of projects. And as I mentioned, one of the things that has been expressed very clearly in the document is that the city will evaluate and consider a wide range of approaches and options, and ultimately determine what's in its best interest to select the appropriate project. However, there are, as I noted, preferences that are expressed for community center and preferences expressed for projects that support and protect the historic character of the Liberty School building. Then there's, as I mentioned before, there's information in section 3 about the kinds of things that we need to see from the respondents in terms of their response document. And we'll get into that in a little bit more detail in a moment. Finally, there's a discussion about the evaluation and selection process. And as I mentioned, the preferences again are reiterated, but also in the selection process, it's very clearly presented that there are going to be, I should say, 2 public meetings for those respondents that are ultimately shortlisted. And when we say shortlisted, say that the city receives 12 responses and deems 3 or 4 of those responses the best, those will be evaluated further as part of 2 public meetings, and ultimately a final selection will be made for the city. And the city, in the RFP document, the city reserves a lot of different rights to select the most appropriate respondent, or look at a whole variety of different responses, and also, if necessary, to reject everything. To reject every single proposal that's presented. So just by issuing out the RFP document does not obligate the city to accept any one of those respondents. Hopefully, there'll be a response or responses that really meet all the requirements of the city and can be selected. But the city is not, just by issuing out the RFP, is not obligated to select any one of the respondents as part of the future development or redevelopment of the Liberty School site. And then there's some documents that will be provided via links that they're not actuated as of yet, but these are existing documents such as the prior redevelopment study. And there's also some maps that show the zoning of the site and its general location. So that's information, background information that's provided by the city to the respondents. And we'll get into that. We'll go through that list momentarily. So that's the basic structure and organization of the RFP document. And really, I think the most important thing to emphasize here is that this is a document that the city has the control of the process. That the city has the control of the process of selecting the most appropriate respondent. The city has control of the process in preparing and adopting a redevelopment plan, ultimately for the Liberty School site, which, by the way, that process includes further public input during the process of the crafting and then final adoption of a redevelopment plan by ordinance. And then the city is in control of the process in entering into the appropriate agreements with the selected, and I call it redeveloper. Developers, there could be any number of different approaches that are chosen with regards to the future use of the Liberty School site. But I'm using that as kind of a shorthand for now. So we have a checklist, and we're asking the respondents to be aware of that checklist. As I mentioned, there are some dates that are listed that are to be determined, depending upon when the RFP document is being issued, and a final schedule is selected for the review and selection of appropriate responses. There's some definitions that are presented in here, and you'll see some of these terms recur throughout the document. One thing I do want to note is that when we refer to the redevelopment entity, that's the city acting as, under its capacity under the local redevelopment and housing law, which is the statute that governs the redevelopment process in New Jersey. The governing body is actually the, quote, redevelopment entity, which is a public entity responsible for the ultimate implementation of the redevelopment plan. It's not referring to the developer or redeveloper that's selected. So in various places in the document, you'll see this: the city desires this, or the city is doing this. And then there's a couple of places where we refer to the redevelopment entity, and that's because at those locations in the document, that's referring to a specific role and responsibility in the redevelopment process of the city of Englewood. And so the appropriate term to use in those couple of places is, in fact, the redevelopment entity, so there's no confusion. As I mentioned, the first section provides a background and description of the Liberty School site, including this description and discussion of some of the prior studies and review documents that have been prepared by the city related to the site, including the redevelopment study that we prepared, T&M Associates prepared, for the planning board when it recommended that the site be in fact designated as an area needed redevelopment. There was a 2010 adaptive reuse study that was prepared, and there's some other documents we'll talk about in just a moment. But again, this is giving the respondents some background about the Liberty School site and the prior reviews and analyses of that site that the respondents may decide to rely on in preparing their response. Right up front and on page 2, we do talk about the community engagement and participation. And we acknowledge that there's a wide variety of opinions and perspectives on the future use of the Liberty School site. And that's really fundamentally why the city is, in the RFP document, has expressed an interest in getting a wide range of responses so it could best evaluate and best evaluate with the community through a public engagement process of what is the best approach to select. And really what we're doing is we're giving them a hint and a perspective on the community's vision for the site without binding them to one specific approach. And I think that's a wise thing to do at this stage in the process. Because as you go along, you can hone that down further and modify it based on some of the things that you've heard by the respondents. We list the various RFP documents, and then we discuss the process. And again, the anticipated schedule, that's going to be detailed. There is no date as of yet for the issuance of the request for proposal document. That's going to be pending the input that we get this evening from the public, as well as further dialogue and discussion with the city council and the governing body regarding the proposed document. And then, as I mentioned, there are various enumerated rights that the city has. It could decide to supplement, amend, or modify the RFP. It could change or alter the schedule for the RFP. It can decline to execute an agreement for any purpose if the city selects a respondent, and then with further due diligence and as further information may come out, the city has the right to basically decide that it doesn't want to proceed with that respondent and may go to another respondent or issue out a new RFP document. And the most important, as I keep on emphasizing, is to accept the proposal that in its sole judgment, and that's the city's judgment, best serves the interest of the city. And as we talked about, there's a variety of different aspects to that interest. And then to ultimately execute a redeveloper agreement with the selected redeveloper under the provisions of the local redevelopment and housing law. And then we talk about the responsibilities of the successful respondent. And fundamentally, the responsibility of the successful respondent is to do what they say and to do it in a manner that is consistent with the approach that the city has viewed as being the most favorable to it. So it also has some financial responsibilities. It has to pay for the appropriate fees. Just being selected as the successful respondent does not give you a free pass through the next steps in the process. You have to go through. You have to pay all applicable fees. You have to, if you're a successful respondent, ultimately come before the planning board for a review of a specific project, if that entails a site plan review and under the provisions of the redevelopment plan. So there's right up front, we want to make the respondents aware of all the things that are their obligation to do without prejudicing any further discussions with regards between the city and the respondents. So number 2, section 2, talks about in a little bit further detail about the redevelopment area, the anticipated project, and some other information. Again, providing the respondents with as full detail of information as possible to allow them to craft an appropriate proposal. And some descriptions of site characteristics. But it's important to note that the respondents have the responsibility to do all the necessary due diligence to prepare an appropriate proposal. The city is not going to be doing the work for them. The city is going to be making the information available to them and providing that opportunity to review relevant documents. But it's the respondent's responsibility to do that due diligence, to review the documents and craft a proposal that accurately reflects the interests that have been expressed in the RFP by the city. And then there's a discussion of all the other various approvals that are ultimately going to be necessary. Again, by being selected as being the successful respondent and potential redeveloper of the site does not give you a free pass for all the other approvals and regulatory requirements and reviews that you're obligated to go through. So then then we get into a lot of detail about how you want to prepare, or how the city wants the respondents to prepare their proposal. What's the content? What information that we're specifically looking for, both not only about the proposal, the project that they are proposing, but as I mentioned before, about themselves and about the entities that are involved with their team, if they have a team. And we really want to know what their track record is, and we want to make sure that all the information that we get is useful information for the city to appropriately evaluate the proposals. Because ultimately, the success is to not only select the most appropriate respondent, but ultimately to get whatever that respondent is proposing to do, to get it completed and get it done within a timely manner, so the city can ultimately accrue the benefits of it. So a lot of the information that is being requested is to help the city evaluate those. Now, the other thing about this, which is important, that when we talk about the form and content of the response, as I mentioned, there's general information, financial information, some technical information, information about the concept itself, administrative information. But what's important too, and this was something that the governing body specifically asked be included in the response documents, is a fiscal impact analysis that is prepared in a manner consistent with the ordinance requirements for a fiscal impact analysis of the city. So we want to make sure that the project is going to have be beneficial from a fiscal perspective, as well as implementing the vision of that the city has for the future of the Liberty School building and site. And I'm not going to go into all the information that's listed here, but suffice it to say, it's pretty detailed. There's a request for references, a lot of background support for the proposal has to be provided by the respondents. And there's some legalese that Bill can get into about the proprietary information, what the city is, once something is submitted, what is under the control of the city. And if there's any questions about that, Bill can discuss. And then one of the most important sections here is the evaluation criteria. So we want everybody that responds to be very clearly aware of the things that the city is going to be, the framework that the city is going to be using to evaluate the acceptability of the responses. So I'm going to go through this list here very quickly, highlight a couple of key things. So it's the following criteria and it's not necessarily ranked in any order of importance. It's understanding the project's objectives, nature and scope, financial strength of respondent, including the availability of equity and ability to secure financing, the level of creativity, innovativeness, and resourcefulness of past and pending projects, firm and staff experience, that's the firm and staff experience of the respondent, and qualifications with similar projects, the availability of the firm's principals to city officials and staff, they need to be make themselves available at the request of the city, the innovativeness of the redevelopment concept that's being proposed. We want really innovative, very interesting projects. The ability to assemble a team of recognized firms as part of the redevelopment team, the viability of the proposed land uses, demonstrated commitment to the public interest and community participation in the development and redevelopment process. That's very important. Not only just, we're going to have community involvement in crafting the RFP and evaluating responses, but the respondents have to commit throughout the redevelopment process, all the way through to the final approval, that they are going to be open and engaged with the community throughout that process. That's an important commitment that the city is requesting of any respondent. a demonstrated ability to track private and public funding in the furtherance of the project. That's often called a pro forma, but it's essentially that's important to understand that they get the money that they need to undertake the project. As I mentioned, the fiscal impact of the proposed project is in fact one of the evaluation criteria. Familiarity with the redevelopment process and legal requirements, commitment to adhere to a mutually agreed project schedule, and then the strength of references. So those are the, again, not necessarily ranked in order of preference, but those are all the factors and criteria that the city is going to be using in evaluating the responses. And then finally, there's, as I mentioned, there's just maps that provide a physical orientation for the site. And then, as I mentioned before, there is our variety of what we have as linked documents. Rather than attaching them, we're going to provide active links that are going to be made available. And that was the first one is the State Historic Preservation Office opinion letter with regards to the Liberty School site. The adaptive reuse study that I mentioned that was done back in 2010, the redevelopment study, which has further information about the building and the site. Resolution number 653618, which is the resolution designating the area as being in need of redevelopment. There was a recent phase 1, which is a very preliminary evaluation of the environmental constraints or environmental issues at the site. So it's phase 1 environmental site assessment. And then the Historic Society is going to be providing us with a document for inclusion to provide further background on the historic character of the Liberty School site and the framework. Now, we may decide based upon the inputs that we get, there may be other documents or other information that the city may deem appropriate, relevant to have on this list. But again, this is to provide the respondents with as much background as information as possible, with the understanding that they have the responsibility for adequately doing the due diligence that are necessary to prepare a successful response. And that's I appreciate your patience in having me walk through that. And Bill, I don't know, I guess the next process, if the council has any questions or comments that they want to make, and I would assume that we would be then opening it up to the public.
Hey, Bill, I believe, right, it looks like we have 7 questions in the queue that we would have Yancey read to Stan before we open it up to the general public again. And I think one comment that I had, Stan, throughout the document, you just mentioned Liberty School. I believe it's the Russell C. Major Liberty School. So we got to get the, so we need to correct the naming of that, the document as well. So we need to fix that.
I think it is. We do use that name in the document. If there's a place where we don't, we'll
there's several places there. I saw in there that we didn't.
And I was using it as shorthand, basically.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, Bill, should you have any comments, and then we'll let Yancey read the questions in the queue, and then we'll open up to the public. Is that the way you want to do it?
Yeah, if I may.
Go ahead.
For one, I'm looking at the Q&A. Maybe many of these are comments and not questions.
Okay.
However, the city manager has actually online answered a number of the questions. There's again, the first several are really just comments.
So I mean, I think if we read the comments, then we can go on, and then and if there's something in the question in there, then we can have Stan respond to it.
Yep.
And sometimes we can respond to the comments as well if we feel that that's it as well.
Yep.
And Nancy, I guess I'm continuing to host and sharing, just so that in case there's something to specifically reference in the document.
Right, I wasn't sure what you were going to do with that. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, unless you want me to stop sharing.
If you're going to do hosting duties, then you're also going to have to pull up the Q&A, because when I do it, it only shows myself. But if you do it, it'll show up to everybody.
All right. Well, let me do this then. Let me stop sharing my screen, and then this way, if there's something that we have to refer to, I'll pull the document up as necessary after we've gone through the other questions. So, okay. I'm stopping sharing now. And there I am. So I assume you're going to take over hosting, Nancy.
You'd have to assign me as host again. So you see my square three little
Yep.
buttons next to you?
Yep. The ellipsis.
And then one of them is make host.
Yep, I see it. Yep, I just said yes.
Okay, I'm back to being host. So I'll pull up the Q&A this way everybody can see it. Everybody can see it? No?
No.
I thought everybody could see it.
There is a button down on the bottom of the screen.
Yeah, I mean, I just hit on Q&A at the bottom of the screen, so.
Yeah. I mean, I thought everybody could see what I'm seeing. I guess not.
Yeah, you're gonna read it, so go ahead. I think that's just easier.
You want me to just read the questions? Because
Yeah.
a lot of them are just really just comments about notice and stuff like that. Stan, there was a correction on one of them, something about you put a date as May 20, 2001 in one of the dates.
I'm sorry?
There was a comment that one of the dates on the document said 2001. I don't know if it's supposed to be 2021.
It probably does. I mean, as I mentioned, all the dates that are referenced will have to be updated.
So here's one question. It says, has there ever been a comprehensive traffic study for that area to determine the effect of what may be built there?
I'm not aware of it. I don't know if Sonia might be aware of any studies. We have not undertaken any traffic studies in that area.
If I may, there was one commissioned before I left office in 2009. Mr. Jakeford and I were on the council at the time, and there was money set aside for that purpose. You may want to look to see if it was executed on.
Stan, there
Yes.
was a traffic study done when 40 Bennett Road was being undertaken, the current structure of that area. So I believe Franz Volsi is familiar with that.
Mm-hmm.
They did some preliminary traffic studies around that area. So I think there's a record of that somewhere. Franz probably has access to that.
Yeah, I think. I mean, if it was done, was this done on behalf of the city or was it done by a developer?
By a developer, but I think it came in front of the planning board because that was one of the questions about traffic because that building was going to be so big. So that's more recent. And I believe Franz may have access to that.
I'm sorry, Council President Cobb, I'm checking with our city engineer, and that was specifically done for 40 Bennett. So no, he just confirmed there was no traffic study done for.
Not for Liberty School, but 40
Okay.
Bennett Road is right there, right in that area.
Right.
I remember asking them about the monument area. So that's where I'm sure that whoever's asking the question is concerned about the traffic around the monument area.
Okay.
So that would give us some sense of what's going on. But obviously that is an issue that we have to look into.
Right. I think that I would be hesitant to put something in the document or link something that was done by a private entity. But what we could do is make them aware of or any of the respondents, if there are other supplemental information that the city has that's available, that we can make that we can provide that list to them. But I would be hesitant to put it in the document itself, implying that it was something that the city had done.
But we can put in the document, we require a traffic study.
Yes, we can.
Whoever the RP, we can put that in there. And that has to be because it's tough getting around that monument as it is right now. So we really have to do our own traffic study for that.
Yeah, understood. That could be added in as a requirement.
Okay. Go ahead, Jens.
Someone's asking, how do you get access to the traffic study? There's just some comments on the traffic study. Sonia, you said you answered some questions. You want me to maybe go over some of the questions and answers that were provided? So maybe.
Sure, I think that would be good. Just so everybody, I made them public, so anyone can see them. But go ahead.
Where that? You made them public.
There's 3 different options: open, answered, and dismissed. And then, so I've answered so far 9 or 7. So you want me to go through them? I can go through them.
Please.
No. Okay. question by Mr. Jeff Carter. This is Jeff Carter from the Bergen County NAACP with Englewood, heavily African American, Hispanic, and Korean. What has been put into the RFP to ensure minority participation on all levels? My response is, and Bill, if you need to add anything, of course, this is part of the local public contracts law. Government entities must adhere to the Exhibit A, or what's covers us for mandatory equal opportunity employment language within any scope of work with any contractor.
That's correct. That language is mandated by the state, and there's actually some from the federal government as well.
Okay. There's another question from anonymous attendee. Has there ever been a comprehensive traffic study for that area to determine the effect of what may be built there? We just answered that, not particularly to Liberty School, but to 40 Bennett Road.
Right.
When is the RFP due? This has not been yet determined. Once the RFP is issued, proposals must be received in 20 days. There's a 20-day window for receipt of proposals. Someone asked, where will the recording live post meeting? Where will we post the recording? I'm assuming that's what this means. And we'll put that on the Liberty School tab on the front page of the website.
It is on our YouTube page as well. So if you click on the YouTube page, live now.
Right.
And we will also have the, I believe I asked earlier, to have hard copies, a number of hard copies of the RFP at City Hall. So people,
Yes.
if they wanted, they could come pick them up.
Yes.
Yep.
And if you have, there are some people that had trouble accessing the RFP on the website. They can email myself, or also the Liberty School email address that's posted on the website, and we can certainly send it out through there. With relation to the city's choice for redevelopment plans, how can we ensure that the same white construction companies will not automatically win the bids over less equipped Black developers? Just sort of to piggy off back the mandatory equal opportunity language, the RFP itself has 3 criteria: cost, technical, and management. Unlike a bid, it is not necessarily the lowest bidder to be considered. The proposal must be responsive to the RFP. Responsive means have all of the documents, meet the criteria set forth in the RFP. Bill, do you want to say anything?
That's correct. Yeah, that's unlike a traditional bid. You're not just forced to accept the lowest bid. That's one of the benefits of this process and the deeming it an area in redevelopment, because it gives municipalities the opportunity to review them and actually negotiate with them. Traditional bids, you just got to take the lowest bid from the lowest responsible bidder, and you can't negotiate. However, the RFP process is different and gives the municipality much more flexibility.
The next question is, will we be able to tour the site and be offered site plans or any other information, the structural integrity of the building? And typically there is a date set to do a site visit. That's before all of the bids are received. Depending on the condition of the building, hopefully, and I'll leave that to the city engineer if it's where anyone's able to walk through it. It will be determined at a later date as to a walkthrough.
And if I could just add, yeah, we do have to make sure we can do it safely, because there have been in our issues with the building. The DEP, in fact, essentially had shut it down about 2 years ago due to issues with boilers and some other hazards. So we just need to make sure we can safely do it.
Right. That's what I've answered so far. So I just have to go back to the open questions. There's a lot of comments. So if you could just please, if you have questions, use this for questions only, not for comments. There's a question here from Crystal Brown. There should have been a traffic study done before the construction on the new apartment building next to the gas station. Do we have access to that? I'll have to get back.
They did do a traffic study, 40 Bennett Road. The private developer
That's the
did.
specific, okay.
Right, specific to that building. They did Englewood Avenue, Lafayette Place, around the monument, Bennett Road. So there is one from the private developer. Now, can we get access to that? That's a whole nother story. We have to go to the planning board.
Yeah, if it was submitted to the planning board, it would become
Yeah.
a public record, so it should
Right.
be get that.
Yeah, so we should be able to get that, right?
Okay, so should they follow up with an Oprah request via the building department?
Yep, for 40 Bennett
Okay.
Road. Yeah, that's what they'd have to do it. Yep.
Okay. Anonymous attendee again. I have a random question. Has the city tried to partner up with the YMCA in order to provide more resources for the youth in their development in these difficult times? I don't know.
With respect to the Liberty School, I'm not aware of discussions at this point, because until the RFP goes out, there really hasn't been any discussions with anyone, just to allow everyone the same opportunity to respond and participate in the process.
Right.
Okay, thank you for convening this meeting. As the city council decided that a community center will be the major focus of the Russell Major Liberty School redevelopment project. What other proposed usages for this project is the city council considering? I agree that a traffic study and appropriate modifications are essential.
Well, that's to be determined. That's why we're putting out the RFP, to see what ideas people come up with.
Right.
Right.
And last question I have on here, why is this taking so long? I think this process, we want to be as transparent as possible. So we appreciate everybody's patience, but I think it's important to have this kind of platform so we can allow everyone to speak and to ask questions. But Mr. Council President, if you will.
Yeah, I think Stan Slechta addressed this early on in his presentation today. He says it's unusual that you get to talk about a draft RFP, and we wanted to indicate, we've always said that there has to be a process and that we were going to be very transparent in the process and allowing the public to participate. So if it's slow, I apologize for that, but we want the public to participate in it and understand what's going on and what's taking place. So we'll get there. We've never been this far along in the process before. But as we continue to work, we want to do our due diligence in terms of moving this process along. And we have to have a process to do that, to make it fair for everybody who's interested in doing something with this property.
I have more questions from anonymous attendee. Are there any plans to ask the developer for some kind of set aside to benefit the community? This has not been done with all of the gentrification thus far.
If I could address that, another benefit of the redevelopment process is that once we get the proposals, we can actually sit down with them and we can have discussion with them about some type of community benefit agreement type things. But you need to see what they're proposing first and see what's included in there and what the city might like to see to be included that has not been. But that can be a discussion. Again, unlike the strict bid process, you can't do that. However, in the redevelopment area, you have much more latitude in negotiating with them in terms of what would be best for the city. Of course, it takes two sides to agree to everything, but that discussion can be had.
Okay. How many additional public meetings, if any, will be hosted?
I think at a minimum 2, right? Stan, or even more, two or more.
Yeah, well, the RFP specifically states that there will be 2 community meetings to review the responses from the shortlisted respondees. I know that we had scheduled this meeting. I don't know if the city is going to be doing any further community meetings or discussions prior to the issuance of the RFP document, but the RFP specifies 2. But as I mentioned earlier, that the RFP also says that the city reserves the right to revise the process or to add any other, additional, and that can be very specifically expressed in the RFP document. We can say that there will be two, and the city reserves the right to have additional community meetings before final selection is made.
Okay.
So, Council President, just for
Yes.
clarity, that sounds like at least 4 meetings, if not 5. There will be at least one more of these town hall meetings
Right.
in this format, just to discuss the RFP process, and possibly a third. And then we've already committed to 2 meetings after the RFP closes to discuss the proposals. So that's at least 4 and possibly 5.
Right. Yep. Sonia?
Would it be possible for Mr. Bailey to use RCM Liberty School if Russell C. Major is too much to say? Thanks, Mr. Cobb, for making the observation. I'm sure he wants to show respect.
Yep.
And I apologize.
He apologized for that. Stan apologized for that.
Okay.
Okay.
Will the gas station remain at that location?
We have nothing to do with that.
It's a private property.
It's a
as I
private
understand.
property.
And it's
So-
not part of the redevelopment area.
Right.
Okay. What happened to the money set aside prior for community center? Does the city still have access to that money?
I think we answered that question before. You can't say it was no money, and I want to be clear. Mr. Bailey, I think we had that question before about money that was set aside and how they funded on capital projects, and it was never funded.
Yeah, I don't know that, we would have to check with the CFO, but
Yeah, I believe
Where
Mr.
that
Kaufman had explained that before, and what we will do, we will make sure that he's here at the next meeting to explain that in detail, because there was never really no funding. They had a line item, but it was never funded, as I believe Mr. Kaufman said. So we will bring him to the next meeting to answer that question in detail.
Okay. Englewood and the surrounding towns have unlimited financial resources via residents and companies. Has the city itself looked into a public, private, and state partnership to achieve the overall goal of a community center? Or is this option even doable?
Yeah, that is something that can be looked at. And again, we'll see what type of responses we get to the RFP.
Right.
But there's kind of 3 general avenues that just in very broad strokes. The city could just do it completely on its own, finance it and what have you, and develop it. It could go to the other extreme and completely hand it over to a private entity to pay for it, develop it, and operate it. Or the third option is a public-private partnership, which you often see, which is done in conjunction with the private entity to help minimize the financial impact on the city and the taxpayers, yet try and get the best product and use for the property that the city can obtain for its residents.
Will the public get to see all of the proposals before they are narrowed down? What is the process of narrowing down the proposals? Part of the RFP process is that there's a committee that is constructed to look at all of the proposals. And there's, like I said, there's basically essentially a scoring sheet between the cost management and technical. And that's used to then look at the proposal in its entirety outside of just the price. Is there anything else that you want to add, Bill?
Just that the proposals under the state statute remain confidential until a decision is made by the municipality. And that is in respect of fairness for the various people presenting proposals, that their information isn't disclosed and not someone else's, trying to keep the field as level as possible.
Right, to not give anybody an unfair advantage. That's what it is.
But we did want to make sure, and as I mentioned before, that it's clear to respondents that those that are shortlisted will have to participate in the 2 community meetings that have been established. So they'll be aware up front that if they get to that level, that they're going to be engaged in a broader public conversation.
Right.
Right.
Okay. Is there any consensus for when the RFP will be finalized so that the 20-day countdown can commence?
No, I guess it would have,
Juncture, right?
right, after we have another second town hall meeting, at that point, if everything is finalized or everybody agrees to how the document is, then we can start the countdown at that point. We will let everybody know when the countdown starts.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilman Hamer. That is a favorable amount of public meetings. I would recommend a hybrid meeting for the 2nd or 3rd if possible. There is something with regard to hybrid meetings, Bill, since we're kind of in COVID, we're still in COVID mode.
Yeah, but that could very well happen that there's a hybrid meeting in the near future, given the CDC guidelines and what have you. Englewood's a little more difficult because we have well-attended meetings. I know other towns, literally 0 or 2 or 3 people will show up, so they're very able to social distance and set up the physical means necessary to make sure everyone's safe. But I think that's coming soon, and I think probably in mid-July we're going to get more guidance from the CDC. Just parenthetically, I just note there's a question: who is Robert Dare?
Yes.
Mr. Dare is partners with Mr. Slahetka, also a planner that works with him, and he's been working on this project as well.
That's correct. Mr. Dare is a professional planner, works with the T&M Associates, and he and I have been working together both on the RFP document and other planning services for the city.
Okay. That seems like a lot of meetings. I understand there's much to discuss, but our decisions and approvals being handled in the back end to avoid unnecessary conversations and discussions to save time. I'm assuming the question is related to any confidential information, or are we talking about non-confidential information?
I'm not sure.
Okay. If you could just clarify, anonymous attendee, what your question is related to.
You know, some of these meetings are mandated under the redevelopment law. For example, once it gets to a point where the city's going to designate someone or enter into agreement, you know, that's all done publicly. The redevelopment plan that's ultimately adopted has to be done publicly. As was mentioned earlier, there has to be public hearings before the planning board, similar to any other major development for site plan approval and what have you. There could be zoning changes that have to be made, which are done by way of ordinance and public hearings. So a lot of those are simply mandated by state law.
Okay, just to summarize that, part of the process of redevelopment is holding these public hearings.
Correct.
Okay. Just so not much else is done on the back end in terms of what Mr. Slahetka has done so far. I'm talking about the draft.
I'm not sure what's meant by the back end. I mean, other than we're going to be using the input that we get at the community, these public meetings, and then to continue to work with the council to finalize the RFP document before it's released. Once it's released, it's a final document, and other than the city reserving the right to make revisions or to reissue the RFP, it essentially is the final document.
Okay. I've been an Englewood resident since 1983, and there have been requests for a community center the entire time. Why does it continue to be a topic of all talk and no action? It's very frustrating. I do not really understand why all the delays in making this happen. Can't we create a committee to solicit major corporate and private funding and donations?
Well, again, this is required under the redevelopment law. This is the process you have to go through. You have to do a request for proposals, so.
Okay. If there are any persons that are connected with the projects presented once the proposals are submitted, will they be required to recuse themselves from the process to determine the winning bid?
Yeah, if anyone has, that's a decision maker in this process, has an interest or conflict, they would not be able to participate in that vote.
How many members of the RFP review committee appointed?
Number of members is determined by the governing body as well as who serves on that committee. The one thing is in Englewood, you can't have a committee that includes 3 council people because that constitutes a quorum. I know previously, sometimes a committee consisted of 2 council people, sometimes a city engineer, city planner, and could be
Myself.
Other, well.
Typically, it's been the city administration and the finance office that would be part of the process as well as the city attorney. So it could very well range from, let's just say 4 to 7 people in total. I think as many professionals as we could possibly get, and with 2 council member liaisons.
Right. I, as the city attorney, wouldn't serve on the committee.
Okay.
Be the legal advisor, though, to the committee.
Okay.
I wouldn't be a voting member, put it that way.
Right.
Okay.
I did want to point out in the glossary, we identified review committee as being the city council, but we can revise that when you decide to finalize the membership. That could be clearly enunciated in the RFP document. If the council so chooses to do so,
Right.
you reserve the right to have whomever you think is appropriate on your review committee.
Okay. It would be essentially a joint effort. There's a similar question here. Who determines who is on the committee that will review the proposals?
The council.
May I also just ask, in this particular proposal, Bill, I don't know if it can be done or not, but maybe just so the community hears it. In this instance, are members of the public or local leaders able to participate in this process? I'm just asking in terms of legal.
I don't think it's expressly prohibited. I've not seen that myself, but that's not to say it can't be done. You'd have to be clear that it's not someone that's interested in the project, obviously.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there any language in the RFP or choosing process to encourage use of local area contractors and professionals to encourage redevelopment to use or local resources?
I think that's what Bill said. We would negotiate with whoever the final people are to talk about what they would use and how they would build this project. Bill, didn't you say that?
Dan, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think it's in the RFP itself, nor would I expect it to be, but as part of the discussion with the interested parties, there could be some discussion about that. But that's not something that goes in the RFP. Again, the RFP is just a document that goes out there to invite proposals to come in. And then we evaluate the proposals that come in, and then we're able to sit down. There may be some that right off the bat, this isn't going to work. And then there might be another category that's like, as was indicated earlier, you start developing a short list, and then you start having meetings with the review committee and the potential the applicants or people that responded to the proposal.
Yeah, and maybe I'll make 2 points to that too. I mean, in putting together their proposal teams or the teams to do the work, they a respondent may determine that providing that locally based businesses and diversity that the city is looking for, it would be advantageous to them to present to get a winning proposal, and then two, the city has in reviewing these proposals can look for, when we say innovative, there could be, and we can mean innovative in not only just the design of the project, but innovative in the way that the teams are constructed and how they are a representative of the city.
Okay. Can the community center master plan conducted under Mayor Huddle be posted on the city website?
Yeah, the master plan is a public document.
Probably on the website already. The master plan is.
I don't know for sure, but
We'll follow up to see.
It used to be there. The master plan used to be on the website. I don't know if it's on there anymore.
But it's the general master plan, or it's a master plan specific to.
That's all I know is general master plan.
Right,
Correct.
just the master plan. Right.
Yeah.
That should be under the, generally speaking, it's under the engineering department. But we'll check to see that it's on the website.
I just checked, it's on there. It's under.
It's on there? Okay,
Under the government. Yeah.
great. At this time, will the city of Englewood allow ownership of Liberty School to pass to a developer?
again,
I
that
don't,
gets back to what type of responses we get to the RFP.
Right.
And again, goes back to kind of those three categories. Maintain public ownership, give it to a private entity for consideration, or some type of combination, public-private.
Yeah, and specifically, we addressed this in some of the feedback that we got from the governing body, and some of the early conversations about this was that in section 2.2, we noted that the city may consider a variety of ownership options that would be most advantageous by the city from a fiscal and economic perspective. So the city wasn't locking itself into any specific ownership structure for the ultimately for the Liberty School site, but that it would consider all different types of ownership approaches that was most advantageous to the city.
okay. Why wait so long until the building gets so bad thanks to the city not to pay attention to maintenance?
We're moving as fast as we can right now.
Yes. To add to Lori's question earlier, a community center in any and every town is vital for all people, especially the youth. We need to put the future people in a safe place to grow the community itself. What is the main reason why this isn't an easier decision? Does it really just come down to getting more tax dollars through commercialized businesses?
I think it's Mr. Bailey, what I say is the process. We have to follow a process. We have to have a documented process, and that's what we're following.
Yeah, and look, there is going to be a financial component to it because you
Right.
obviously have to determine how it's going to be paid for and then the ongoing operational costs. So if the city just wanted to get tax revenue, it'd be real easy. They could just sell it for to the highest bidder. But we wouldn't be going through this exercise, I don't think, if that was, I don't want to speak for the governing body, but if that was the goal, was to simply maximize revenue, this would be a much easier process.
Are these hearings really being conducted in earnest with the goal of truly finding an actionable path to creating a community center at the Liberty School? This has been an ongoing request from city residents and taxpayers for decades. Why the decades of non-action?
We are committed to finding a solution for the Liberty School. That's why we're going through this process. And it hasn't been, this is as far as it's been, as far as I know, So I think that speaks to our commitment to moving this along.
This is an incredibly important issue. Is there a well thought out plan to reach a larger portion of the community to let people know about this project? I found out about this meeting by chance. How about mailings, Facebook announcements, a town hall meeting style meeting? As far as communications, we have put it out through all of our social media. And any alert system that we have. There was a robocall that went out earlier this afternoon. So anybody who has the ability to sign up through all of those avenues, please do so. That is where we will be posting any major announcements. And typically robocall is only done through emergency situations. So we felt that this issue is relative and very important. And we use that avenue to promote this town hall meeting. What happened to the nonprofit group that spoke at city council meetings? And what about the group that spoke at the school? Are those folks involved in this RFP stage?
They will have an opportunity to respond as all other interested parties. That's why the statute sets up the process this way, that everyone is responding to the same request for proposals. So it's open to anyone. They need to satisfy the criteria in there and make the proper submission. But the answer is yes.
Okay.
Yes, meaning they will have an opportunity to respond.
I think this is a question. So it's the commitment to find a solution for our RCM Liberty School, finding a path to a community center. Is the solution, I'm just trying to paraphrase. The commitment is to find a solution to the Liberty School, and the path is a community center. If I'm not saying correctly, would you mind reframing your question?
And I just want to reiterate to Sonia that again, in section 2.2 of the RFP, there is a very specific statement that says, while a wide range of options will be considered, the City Council will look favorably on proposals that incorporate a community center within the proposed project. So that's an expressed preference that it is expressed in the RFP.
Okay. That's all I have for now. Let me just skim through these because there was a lot of comments, and I want to make sure I didn't miss any. And of course, make sure that you use the email address for follow-up questions, and we'll post those on the website. There was a comment about suggested meeting locations if we do a hybrid. So I think I just want to make that clear that we're open to any sort of location that could have us safely, socially distanced in a safe manner. Someone used the example of a high school. Ms. Marin?
I just wanted to say, so it doesn't get lost in here, maybe I don't think I'm incorrect in assuming our meeting tonight in exposing the draft RFP to everyone is to make sure we haven't misrepresented anything in the draft or left out anything in the draft. And I see that we have a substantial number of participants and of course a lot of questions, but I haven't heard anything really that would substantially change or add to the draft. And I think that's really the purpose of our meeting tonight, to make sure that once we release the draft, it's complete and represents all the different functions that we hope it'll serve and get us the best result.
Okay, so just as a follow-up question, many residents don't have the ability to attend a virtual Zoom meeting like this. We really need an in-person meeting. Can't you find a way to hold one in an outdoor or large venue that would meet CDC requirements, require masks or vaccine cards or negative COVID tests?
Well, we'll explore that before the next meeting.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, and someone has asked to repost the email address. I will do so in a few minutes.
We will make sure that the next meeting date gets out by the end of this week, hopefully, right? We should be able to turn that around. So people will have enough time to prepare whatever questions they may have and to participate. And then we can find a place, maybe we can change the venue or how we do a hybrid.
Okay. And one other question, can residents of Englewood see the draft proposal? Yes, it is on the city's website.
Sure.
There is a tab that says Liberty School. Once you click on there, the link is there to the document itself.
And also we're going to have some copies at City Hall as well, if they want to stop by City Hall and pick up a copy.
Yes.
So.
Another question, why not a meeting in Liberty School parking lot? Seems like the right venue for the cause. I don't know that that actual venue would afford everybody a good opportunity. It's not in the best shape. So I think it's probably best to use it in a venue that perhaps that has seating and is better in terms of arrangement for a town hall meeting. This project requires a state-of-the-art, top-notch green facility. There are plenty of entertainers, athletes, corporate, headquartered businesses, elite residents, philanthropic persons, foundations, and grants available to get this done. Solid-State LG for the wiring and technology items, NBC for media center. Hospitals can fund a nursing-based portion of the building. Solid-State recording and athletic items from NYC. Our teams and artists, the people, and the money is the right in front of you. So I guess the question is if there's an ability, sort of a previous question about private funding and whether that could be an approach. And as stated previously, this proposal is open to all.
That's right.
Okay. Why not use the roller skating rink for a meeting? I think we're at this point, we will figure out a mutual location for everybody, and that works for this kind of forum. But thank you for the ideas. Judith mentioned a good number of participants. How many participants are on this evening? Thus far, including the 10 panelists, we have 98 attendees. So that's 108 here.
Well, we had more than that. At one point, we had 121 max.
Okay. And that's also not to mention the YouTube, which that are not on this Zoom call specifically.
Councilman Hamer, you were saying something?
No, it was me, Charles.
Oh.
I'm happy that there are over 100 people participating, but in the city of 28,000, it's not nearly robust enough. And I don't know if there's a more innovative way other than the robocalls, which I think took a lot of thought for the city manager to deploy to get more people engaged. And that's why maybe a meeting in person someplace with more attention might actually get more people involved. The more people involved, the better product we'll have.
Can you reveal who are the runners so far for the RFP? If not, when does this information get released? The RFP hasn't been put out there, so there are no runners for the RFP. Once it's out there and it's awarded, then that information is public information. But at this juncture, up until it's awarded, we don't have anything right now. Why did you use wide range of options, language, and not make it specific community center RFP?
Does the city, someone from the city want to answer that?
Well, we use that because we're trying to get as many people. What are we trying to do? We're trying to get as many respondents to the RFP to bring us options to see what we could do with that site.
And we may find out something that we haven't been thinking of. The city might, somebody might bring to the city a very innovative approach or an interesting way to approach.
To get us to a community center. So
That's right.
you know,
exactly.
we want to bring all the ideas there, and then we sift through the ideas with the public, and then we come up with what we come up with.
When was the last time more than 100 people attended a meeting?
Oh,
I would assume.
when we were at Greco School, I believe, 2 years ago.
Yeah, we
it-
typically get about 39 people other than the actual attendees attending meetings. But again, the point is that there are thousands upon thousands of people affected by this decision financially, emotionally, spiritually in a pandemic. So we have to figure out how best to get more people engaged.
Will more advance notice be provided for future meetings? A day or two advance notice is hard for many people to schedule around. That may help attendance. I believe we discussed this time frame at the last council meeting at the beginning of June. So it has been in the works, this date range. I believe the 17th didn't work for some because of obviously because of the school board meeting. So this was the next option.
And based on the schedule, any meeting we have going forward, there'll probably be a 2-week lag or something in between it. So you'll have probably 2 weeks to in terms of notice, I believe.
Okay.
At least, you know, but we'll determine that. And hopefully we could speak to that tomorrow at the council meeting.
Okay. The other two are just comments here. It's 7:31 at this point. I don't know how we want to move forward if we're still taking more questions and answers.
We got a hard stop at, I believe, 8. Yes, Mr. Bailey.
Yeah, I was just gonna, as you indicated at the beginning of the meeting, Council President, about a hard stop at 8. And again, a reminder, it's unrelated to this, but
We have a closed session.
you know, I'll keep it as brief as I can, closed session discussion regarding the pending COA litigation.
Right. So I think what we could do is we can, if there are any more questions, we can answer those questions, and then we can just wrap up and go to the closed session. Mr. Bailey, you think
Yes,
so?
sir.
Yeah.
Sonia, I think there are are there a couple more questions that we see? Or they're just comment?
There were just mainly comments. There was one more that just came in. Do you do mailers to all registered voters? We do not. We don't typically do mailers. One person did have a pretty good suggestion about this was we have the fireworks. We can certainly have a table out there and we could create a flyer.
Then for the next meeting.
For the next meeting, yeah.
Yep.
We'll have
Yep.
paper copies. We can
Yep.
certainly do that.
I don't know if you want
Join us
to.
for the fireworks, everybody, June 30th. Thank you, Englewood Hospital.
So Council President, I don't know if you want to close this portion and then open up to the public with
Yep.
the limited time remaining.
Right. So we'll close the Q&A part of it, and then we'll open up the public session. And we have a hard stop at 8 p.m. because we have to go into closed session. Yancy, do we have, we can just stay right here on this panel?
Are we going to open session? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Session
Yeah.
first?
Yes.
I didn't understand the question.
We can
Yeah.
stay right here.
Yeah, this isn't, please do. There are several people with their hands raised.
Okay.
Have you opened it up to the public?
Yep. Name, address, and we have 2 minutes to answer the questions.
And as a reminder to everybody, please no offensive language or you will be cut off, no warning.
Right.
First one with their hand raised is, sorry if I say your name incorrectly, Deborah Han. Unmute yourself. Deborah? Deborah, it's your turn to speak. You have to unmute yourself.
Deborah, you have to unmute yourself. We can't hear you.
Who next?
On to the next person.
Yep.
Okay, next is Jewel Shears. Jewel, you have to unmute yourself.
I'm Jewel Shears. I didn't really raise my hand to say anything, but since I've been asked to speak, first of all, this was not a last minute meeting. I do believe that more time should have kind of gone in, with making the public aware. A few of us basically kind of seeing that on Facebook and some other locations, and like I said, going forward, I just basically feel that maybe we should basically have information posted in various locations. A lot of people are at the stores, uptown, whatever, and to give them the opportunity to know that the meetings are taking place. The people that are interested, as far as I'm concerned, are going to come out. I mean, I can throw this out there all day long. If they're not interested, they're not coming. So just make it aware for the people that are interested, want to know basically what's going on basically with the building. I knew a few people because of one of the host agency, because I work for a nonprofit that was there, and I kind of seen some of the things that were going on in the building where, yes, it was falling apart. And I just kind of feel that, we should have done something long before now to have made changes to kind of upgrade the building. Like I said, I'm going to just kind of sit back and kind of listen to what changes are going to come forward and basically see where it goes from there.
Okay. Thank you.
Next is Peter Jansen.
Pretty fine, Dan. Hello, everyone. Thank you for my comments. I'm Pete Jansen, 589 Ridgeland Terrace. Folks, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for Englewood. This property is 2.25 acres and is one of the last large city parcels available for redevelopment. It is near the city center. It is walking distance to residential areas in wards 3 and 4, and currently has 106 on-grade parking spaces, which could also be expanded. It is just 1 block from McKay Park, the city's largest park, and McKay Ice Rink. In my professional view as an engineer, project manager, and planner, the guiding principles for you should be 1, supporting community needs, 2, maximizing benefit to the most residents' interests, and 3, minimizing initial investment and operating costs. We have already documented much of this in our Englewood Master Plan. The document is out there on our city website, and as Warner Wolf would say, let's go to the videotape. In preparing the master plan, the city held 3 town hall meetings. The one theme that came out the most is we need a community center. The purpose of the master plan is to, this is page 58, is to provide a policy framework for municipal boards and city council agencies to evaluate and plan for future development. Page 39, Liberty School is a gateway. It's an iconic historic structure that is a gateway to the downtown and a West Palisade landmark. Page 118, we need more than a rec center. There has been this is an outstanding desire among residents for a physical facility to serve as a community center. It's an aspiration for more than a recreational facility, but rather a social, cultural, educational, and recreational center. In my view, it should contain conference facilities, public meeting rooms, music art rooms, and health sport rooms. It is my hope that the review of this proposal and the final selection by the City Council will be grounded in their sworn commitment to support the Englewood Master Plan and do what's best for the greatest proportion of Englewood residents. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next is Diane Jensen. Diane?
I'm sorry, yes. Diane Jansen, Ridgeland Terrace. I'm imploring the City Council to reconsider the priorities in this draft RFP. I agree that the historic character of the building must be maintained, but I strongly believe that the RFP should be limited to proposals for a dedicated, full-time community center. And the city should keep a majority stake in Liberty School and request proposals that focus on innovative public-private partnerships that would attract federal, state, and foundation funding. Right after Derek Chauvin was found guilty in the manslaughter and murder of George Floyd, Minnesota Attorney General stated, "This verdict reminds us that we must make enduring, systemic, societal changes. Nobody can do everything, but we can do something. And you guys are our something. We need you." Englewood is a divided city separated on so many levels: race, religion, cultural background, socioeconomics, and even by railroad tracks. We can initiate positive change and come together through a community center. At a recent Englewood Board of Health meeting, a Rutgers consultant presented the results of focus groups and a survey that was done under a grant. The report, an Englewood Community Center, is listed as the #1 priority in the recommendations for improved, sustained, and more equitable health outcomes. All Englewood City Council members have publicly stated their support for a community center. Some say we cannot say that we can't afford to have a community center. A more global view with foresight comes from our public school principals, who say that we can afford not to have a community center. All residents of Englewood need a community center, for this is where we as a diverse peoples can come together, get to know one another, positively grow together in our quest to address racism, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and everything else, overcome its barriers. This is within our grasp right here, right now. Please, Englewood City Council, do not let it slip away.
Thank you, Diane. Next is Amy Bullock.
Good evening, Amy Bullock. I just want to echo what Diane and Pete have expressed, and I'd just like to add that the master plan also states that if the residents of the Englewood community feel the need for an independent community center, the city council is to create a plan for one. So with that being said, my question is, we pretty much have an open RFP for the Russell C. Major Liberty School building. And if the proposal that is eventually accepted does not include a community center, what is the city council's plan after that to get a community center in Englewood, since that is one of the last large assets that the city owns? Are you guys answering questions at this meeting, or is it just an opportunity for us to make statements?
Charles is muted.
We will consider all opportunities and we will address that issue based on the results of the RFPs that we receive. And that will be one of the topics and how we address that. So we will take that into consideration. That will be a high priority of ours in this body, if we were chosen to do something else with that building other than the community center.
Make the recommendation that if it looks as if it's going in that direction, you engage the community in what you think the long-term solutions could be.
Yes.
So that we're not told, okay, this is the proposal that's been accepted, and we have no vision as to how we're going to get to that community center.
I think Stan Slahekta said earlier, when we narrow it down to the four or five, they will have to present themselves to the community, and the community will have input into that decision. So it won't be any secrets. The community will be able to weigh in with whoever it is.
Yeah, and Council President, may I just add,
Sure.
as I also stated, and it's very clearly enunciated in the RFP document, that the city is not, by issuing out the RFP, city is not obligating itself to choose any one of the respondents if none of the respondents satisfactorily address the city's interests and needs. So city actually is in control of the process, and then you can make the decisions as to what the next most appropriate steps would be. So I think you have the flexibility and you have the control over the process, which is necessary for an important site like this.
Okay. Councilwoman Marin had her hand raised. I'd like to hear what she wanted to say.
No, I didn't.
She didn't. She said she did.
Thank you, Amy. Next is Ada Flores de Leon. Ada, you have to unmute yourself. De Leon, you have to unmute yourself. We'll go to the next person.
Yes. She's if she wants to come back, she can, but she's not responding right now.
Next is Deborah Moore. Ms. Moore, you have to unmute yourself.
My question is about the community that we're hoping to serve. My name is Deborah Moore, and I attend Metro Community Church in Englewood, and I also work for the community center, the food pantry. So I see the need for not just helping and handing out, but a place for our Englewood residents to be able to gather, to be able to do, to serve, and to be able to serve. What are we offering? If you're not offering a community center, what are you offering to these children when there's no school, when they're finished school, what are you offering to the senior citizens? I'm not hearing any kind of a plan that way. Not just a building, not just another apartment building with a little room for someplace, but an actual working, full functioning community center for the residents of Englewood.
Ms. Moore, I think that this is the beginning of the process that we have to go through in order to make it transparent for anybody who's interested in the Liberty School, in the Russell C. Major Liberty School. And what we're hoping to see when people fill out these RFPs, that they tell us these kinds of stories, and these stories will be told to the public, so we have an opportunity to decide what we want. And as Mr. Slahekta said, we have the flexibility to pivot and take the projects or move in a different direction. So we're taking all this feedback that you're giving us, and we will have additional conversations amongst ourselves to see, to answer, how do we answer these questions that, or address some of these topics or concerns that the public has.
Next is Jeff Carter. Carter?
Good evening, everyone. I just want to circle back to my question. that I put in the chat. And yes, I fully understand the laws, but as I go around Bergen County and look, whether it's with development or workers or whatever, African Americans and Hispanics and Koreans seem to be left out of the mix, and they have the lower ending part of the job. So I would like to see, first of all, I would like to see and make sure that, you know, whoever gets it, make sure that they have equity, not just in the actual workers, but in their whole firm. And that we're coming out of a pandemic, and it's nice to say that, you know, as somebody mentioned, George Floyd and whatever, but economic equity is also important. And Englewood is one of the most diverse towns in Bergen County, and it should reflect that in the job market and everything as we go along. And I'm done now, but I echo everything that Diane Jensen said. Thank you very much.
Next is Hakeem Merritt. Merritt. Go ahead, you're unmuted. Can't hear you. No, you're muted again. Try unmuting. You're unmuted. Try speaking. Can't hear. Yeah, he left the room. Okay, next is Pamela Major. Major?
Thank you so much. It's really a privilege to be here tonight. And I want to thank the council. We've been on this journey for quite a bit. And from what I am hearing, it sounds like you all in the RFP process are leaning more towards helping people to understand the need for a community center. You know, I echo what the Jansen said, as well as what Amy has said. And having been a graduate of the Englewood Public School System, we know that the school system in and of itself will not pull together people. And a community center has an incredible ability to do so. I've already said that I will assist in any way possible with fundraising. We have, in fact, been in contact with people who are interested in doing fundraising and who have some corporate background as well as entertainment background to help us raise money for this. So should this occur, we'll certainly be a part of that. But again, thank you for specifically laying out in the RFP that more consideration will be given to a community center. And thank you again, Mr. Cobb, for remembering that it is the Russell C. Major Liberty School, named after an icon in civil rights, human rights hero, happens to be my father, but that also happens to be the truth. So thank you for respecting that and calling others to that attention. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Next is James Irwin.
Good evening, everyone. So most people in Englewood, when they think of a community center, they think of the community house or memorial house. After selection, you know, what type of plan does the council have in place to ensure that the proper programming is there? So when you think of the community center back on Army Street, you're thinking about programming to help seniors, of course, handicapped folks, children, of course. But you also had people with relationships like Sissy Braithwaite would call down to judges, to Hackensack, to get kids who might have had some trouble issues. You had Mr. Brown, Sissy or Bill Porcelain, God rest them both, would be able to call Mr. Brown and say, listen, I'm sending you 3 kids. get them some jobs for the summer. So the building, and once someone comes to the table with the adequate whatever you are requiring from that level, what are you going to ensure that the proper programming is there to facilitate the success of this type of community center? Hello.
James, I think that your points are spot on, but we have to get today was really focused on this draft RFP to get people to come in. So once we have people who have submitted RFPs and we've gone through the selection process, you and the rest of the public can ask these people, these potential suitors, those questions about their programming for that particular building. You'll be able to ask them directly and participate in that conversation with them. So I think that at that time, when we get there, those questions will be appropriate, and hopefully we can get some answers from people, because that will that's going to make the decisions. That's going to be something that's going to drive decisions. If they can't answer those questions, then that's going to be a problem.
Understood. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Next is Michael Yee. Pastor, unmute yourself, please.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hello? Yep. Michael Yee, 141 Jane Street. I'm so sorry. I have my children in the car with me, but yeah, I just I want to strongly suggest that we look very, very hard at the community center, because I really want to believe that Englewood is a place that wants to celebrate unity, among our different populations, But the fact of the matter is, our city is divided by race, by religion, by creed, by age, and the remedy to that sort of division is for people to come together and run into each other and to, share commonalities and celebrate differences and things like that. And right now, as it stands, our children really don't have a central location where that can happen, and I really think that a community center would really, really help and go a really long way in creating a lot of those bridges, a lot of those the unity that I want to believe that Englewood wants to celebrate. So I just wanted to just throw in my 2 cents and just strongly say, please look very, very hard at the community center option. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next is Sarah Ladyman.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Sarah Ladyman. I live at 109 Grand Avenue. I've lived in 4 different places in New Jersey. I've lived here for about 5 years, and I have the strong impression that Englewood is a place that is deprived of quality public resources that have equal access. And so I feel very strongly that the RFP should be directed at a community center for the benefit of the public, especially the youth that live here. I live in a condo building, and I've been working remotely in the pandemic, and I've witnessed and heard children in this building that have not had the opportunity to go to school, quite frankly, going crazy. This is a community in need of as much public resources as possible, and I just feel that children and the youth would benefit especially from a quality community center that would be the responsibility of another entity other than the city. So I just really, really urge the city council to look into or direct the RFP at a community center. Thank you.
We have 2 more minutes, and then we have to go to a closed session of a hard stop.
Next is, in the meantime, Janelle Johnson.
She'll be our last person because we had to go 8 o'clock.
Yeah, several people raised their hand after you said that.
Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Janelle Johnston. I live at 81 Chester Place in Englewood, New Jersey. I'm representing In the Meantime's POP program. We service the youth of Englewood. Not only do we service the youth of Englewood, I am in favor of the community center as a new organization in Englewood. My question in regards to the request for proposal is that will there be a high consideration if there is a collaborative effort of organizations and agencies that currently exist, and how can we apply collectively to be considered for the community center? So not one agency solely doing it as a whole, but possibly everybody honing in on their expertise to service the community, the seniors, the disabled, the children, even considering reentry as well as summer employment. I currently have two young Black African-American little boys, a 14-year-old as well as a 9-year-old. We have been providing programming in the park and actually re-socializing our children to understand our roles and responsibilities in the community, and actually having the support of our police department, just changing the dynamic and how we all see each other, not having it as a social economical thing or a race issue, but just really collectively coming together. So my question, I know it's loaded, but I really want to know how can, if applying as a newer agency or a small nonprofit, if we can collaborate when applying for the RFP.
Mr. Bailey, you want to take that one?
Sure. Yeah, various entities can collaborate, but they need to submit a joint application or joint proposal and make sure that they respond to the criteria set forth in the RFP. So yes, it can be different groups collaborating, but they need to jointly submit the proposal. It could be a nice comprehensive proposal. However, again, you need to go through the RFP and look at the checklist and submit the proper documents, financial things and everything else. Who the principals are, who the players are, who's part of the team, so to speak. And that needs to be set forth in the proposal.
Yeah, and Bill, may I add something that I think a smart respondent would understand, when they're going in and preparing this their proposal, would attempt to understand the community and the opportunities for partnership with groups and organizations that are within the community, might lead them to an advantage in their proposal. And that's not to say that that is going to be exactly required, but I would think that somebody that was putting the proposal together would look to establish that sort of broad-based perspective that might position itself well in the review process.
Thank you.
Mr. Kopp, there's three more. Did you want to allow them to speak, or it's 8 o'clock? It's after 8.
We have three. We can allow them to speak. They have 2 minutes. That's all. We can't take anybody else after that because we have
the final three. Okay. All right. First is Janine Ellis.
Good evening, Janine Ellis, 1 William Street. I just want to say that I agree with everything that has been said here tonight by Diane Jansen, Amy Bullock, James Irwin, and so many others. The bottom line is that at this point, we deserve and we need a community center. It's not even a want at this point, it's a necessity to save our community. We have many children and families, and looking around, I know our development that's happening speaks more to single people and those that are commuters or whatever, but we do have several families in this community, young families that have a need. It's not just a want. You heard Janelle Johnston talk about her boys. They need this community center because it can do so many things for us. What I want is when those proposals do come through, that the council looks at it, and I implore you to look at it in a way that speaks to what we truly need, a community center, not a bunch of other schools or mixed use or whatever. Let's find a way to make it true to what the needs of the community are. That's the only way that it's going to work. And I thank you for finally sharing with us and look forward to the next meeting. Hopefully it can be sooner than later. Have a good evening.
Nancy, next.
Okay, next is, sorry, I always, Magayi Matos.
Good evening, and thank you so much for the extra time. My question is, I'm in total support of a community center. I am in total support of having that as a entity in our community, something that we can be prideful of, something that will generate income. My question is that if you honor the demands and needs of our community with a community center, will you promise not to raise the property taxes?
I think we'll, this is one of the things Stan didn't cover and he'll cover at the next meeting, but we'd have to borrow money, and that's the only way that would have to happen. If the city's involved, if somebody else is doing it, that's a different story. So we have to go through the RFP process to see how this thing is going to be paid for. And then that conversation will definitely be a subject, a topic that we will cover.
Thank you so much for your time in this meeting. I look forward to another meeting soon.
Yep. Nancy, who's the last person?
Last is Reverend Harper.
Reverend Harper. She's last.
Greetings, everyone.
Greetings, Reverend Harper.
For this presentation tonight.
You're breaking up.
And when can you hear me now?
No, it's bad. Keep going. Try. It's bad.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody else is hearing her clearly. It's bad, right? It's not good, right? Connection is bad, Reverend Harper.
What about now? Can you hear me now?
A little bit better, yeah.
Okay. I have all faith that this community center will be a reality. I come with an offering. If I'm physically and mentally able, I would like to offer a 6-week sewing class for middle school students. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Bailey, I want to thank everybody who participated tonight in this town hall meeting, and look forward to the next date, which we will hopefully give you some information by the end of this week. Thank you for your comments. And we will now go into closed session. Mr. Bailey, could you please take us there, please?
Yes, sir. Be it resolved by the governing body of the city of Englewood that a meeting closed session pursuant to subsections 7 and 8 dealing with litigation, contract negotiations, and matters within the attorney-client privilege, and be it further resolved, discussion conducted in closed session can be disclosed to the public, taking final action thereon, provided it does not constitute undue invasion of privacy or violate the attorney-client privilege. And be it further resolved that while the council will return to open session, that is simply to adjourn the meeting and no formal action will be taken at that time. Motion second and
A motion and a second to go into close. So I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, we're going to closed session. Yancy, then you put it on the today, right?
Yes, I sent it out today.
Right. Just repeating it. So.
Good night, all.
Right.